Well, Shana Tova
Shana Tova.
and Shabbat Shalom. On Rosh Hashanah, I spoke about the miracle of Jewish peoplehood. The miracle of Jewish peoplehood. And tonight I want to offer a part two of that message. I want to answer and help explore with you, what do we tell our kids in a moment like this? What do we tell our grandkids, our nieces, our nephews? What do we tell the children who look up to us in this moment as we step into a very uncertain new year? How do we explain this moment? And I want to explore this question with you tonight because Jewish kids always have a little bit of explaining to do. This came to a head for me growing up. Many of you know my story, in Birmingham, Alabama. And I had to explain this Jewish thing most of my life, but I felt it most keenly at my senior year of high school. We had a newly dubbed holiday assembly. It used to be called our Christmas assembly, and they changed the name to make it a little bit more ecumenical, which was very nice, until I realized that all this meant was it was a Christmas pageant followed by, or included in the middle, with a Hanukkah song. And here's how it went. And remember, this is Birmingham, Alabama. So we're sitting there in this auditorium, and our choir is putting on their production of the year. And it's a big production. It begins with Silent Night, which, yes, we sang Silent Night at my public high school in Birmingham, Alabama. It was beautiful for what it was. There was a nativity scene, fantastic. There was a falling snow. The choir did this beautiful, perfect three-part harmony kind of thing, and then they wanted to make it a little bit lighter. So they moved that set to the side, and on the set came a big sleigh. There was falling confetti. There was popping lights. We did a little bit of Santa Baby, a little bit of Jingle Bell Rock. There were the dancing reindeer. It was terrific. It was great. And then, and I'm not kidding, the curtains closed, and the three Jewish kids in this choir stepped into three spotlights. The lights were down. It was completely dark, except for these three poor Jewish kids in the choir. And I'm not kidding you. They each held a candle, and they sang the slowest, saddest, most dirge-like version of Light One Candle for the Maccabee Children that I've ever heard in my life. And I realized the reason why they're singing so slowly is because the Christian kids behind the curtain are busy setting up for walking in a winter wonderland. And so all the while they are singing, light one candle for the Maccabee children. Nah, nah. Behind the curtain, you can see the shuffling. You can hear the little whispers. There's like a sparkly foot that comes out. And I was cringing. I could not wait for this dirge to be over. And finally it was. The three Jewish kids step off the stage. Thank God. And the curtains open, and we have Walking in a Winter Wonderland, and the holiday assembly was over. Fantastic, wonderful. I wish I could shut it out of my mind, but I'm talking to you about it today, some decades later. And I remember thinking, as I was leaving this auditorium, we are getting our tuchuses kicked out there. Right? Because if you were choosing between Santa Baby and Light One Candle, right? What kind of choice is that? And truly, I'm leaving the auditorium thinking, thank God we don't evangelize. Because if we did, who would choose this? And I want to share this choice with you in a way, because tomorrow morning we have a Torah reading that ends with choice, that ends with an interesting kind of choice. Moses, at the end of his life, and at the end of the Torah portion that we read tomorrow, says to the children of Israel, see, I have set before you life and death. I have set before you life and death. Choose life, Moses says, that you and your children may live. That's quite a choice, right? I set before you life and death. I mean, just imagine for a moment. You're at a restaurant, and the waiter says, so, our daily special, if you would like, is this catch of the day, or you could have a gun to your head. What do you choose, right? I mean, that's the choice as we're walking into the promised land. And the choice becomes even more stark. when you know what's on the other side of the Jordan. Because you and I might understand the promised land as this land of milk and honey, which it was. But there was more to the promised land than this. In fact, the promised land was full of danger. If you look at our Torah and if you look throughout our rabbinic tradition, the promised land is a land of primordial giants. It's a land of fallen angels. It's a land of monsters. It's a land of malevolent spirits. It's a land full of wild beasts around every corner waiting to rip you apart. That's the promised land as imagined by our Torah and our rabbinic tradition. And so when Moses tells us that we have a choice between life and death, what kind of choice is that? What kind of choice is it? I'm seeing only one option. And I share this context with you because we are walking into a profoundly uncertain year. We're walking into this chapter ahead. What choice do we have when there are so many people in the world who are trying to take that choice away? Half the world's Jews live in Israel. And what has become recently apparent, though many have known this whole time, is that some of the largest missile arsenals in the world are pointing directly at the heads of half the world's Jews. That is a terrifying situation. But if anybody here knows an Israeli, they are worried about you and about me. Because in diaspora Judaism, and we are feeling this in real time, on the left, irony of ironies, we, the Jewish people, the victims of 2,000 years of European cruelty, have now become the face of it for those who seek to hurt us on the left. For those on the right who seek to hurt us, we are now the face of communism, of Marxism, of socialism, of whatever ism you don't like. By the way, apparently we can control weather now, which is an upgrade. So we've learned something new. Right? So for those on the right, we are now the face of all the isms that they hate as well. It's coming at us from the left. It's coming at us from the right, which is why I've had, and I think Cantor Hamstra probably has as well, 100 conversations with parents, with grandparents, with those who have children who look up to them, all essentially asking over this past year, what do I tell my kids? What do I tell my kids when this part of who I am and this part of who they are has become so tenuous, now might even put them at risk? Now, we come by this question honestly, because when you go back to the beginning of the Jewish story, not with our matriarchs and patriarchs, but as a national story in the land of Egypt, isn't it fascinating how the Jewish story, it doesn't begin in a place of strength or fortitude? The Jewish story begins in slavery, begins in Egypt. It begins with degradation, it begins with humiliation, it begins with cruelty, and it continues, in a way, in every generation from Egypt moving forward. You know, there's a Jewish joke. The world's first Jewish telegram. Have you heard this one? The world's first Jewish telegram. Start worrying, details to follow. Right? But we come by our anxiety honestly, because in every generation we've known some shade of what it was to be a slave in Egypt, which is why I personally, and I know many of you, bristle at some of the quote-unquote solutions that have come forward on these college campuses facing a surge of anti-Semitism themselves. You have schools like Penn, Harvard, Columbia, and others who have these massive DEI departments who divide the world, and this is not my worldview, essentially into oppressor and oppressed. Over this past year, Jews have occupied the oppressor column, and the solution, and I'm painting this in broad stroke, is what if, and all these colleges have come up with this, what if we just move Jews from oppressor column to oppressed column? Right? And then we would enjoy on these college campuses the protections of these massive departments alongside others who experience hatred as well. And most Jews I know, I'll speak for myself, bristle at this solution. I bristle at it because I know and you know where victimhood leads. I know and you know, or let me put it this way. You know how you got to Potomac, Maryland? because 100 generations before you, in 100 different times, 100 different places, those who you come from have been kicked out of the places they've called home. That's how you eventually got here. It is not an easy story. I know and we know what happens when we are the victims. It is not an academic exercise for us. This is our family story. It is our real life. And also we know what happens to the world when we become the victims. There's a powerful essay written by Dr. Walter Mead out of Bard College. He is a scholar of foreign affairs, studies foreign governments, and not Jewish, by the way. And one of the things that Mead points out, and I'm paraphrasing here, is that anti-Semitism is not worse or more vile or more evil than the other hatreds that are running rampant in society. But it is, on a societal level, on a governmental level, more corrosive. And what he means by this is if you are in charge of a government, what kind of good decisions are you going to be able to make for your country if you believe that Jews are the problem facing the world? If you are in charge of economic policy, what kind of good economic decision are you going to be able to make for your country if you believe that somehow or another Jews secretly control the banks? How are you going to create a culture of free media, et cetera, if you believe that at the root of every problem is you and me? Anti-Semitism, he writes, is not more vile or evil, but it is a leading indicator of societal collapse. And so we know what happens when we become the victims. We know what happens to us. We know what happens to the places we love that we call home. We know where victimhood ends. And we know that we can't pass this down. So what do we tell our kids? What do we tell our kids instead of this story? So I want to share with you a line from the Exodus story. It's actually one of my favorite lines in the entire Torah. It teaches that as we left Egypt, we left chamushim. We left triumphantly. Say that with me. Triumphantly. Triumphantly we left Egypt. And it's not because the wilderness was an easy place. Right? Talk about the promised land not being an easy place. The wilderness was not an easy place. Has anybody here ever been to the Sinai Peninsula before, by the way? Anybody here? A couple of hands. I want you to imagine sand dune after sand dune after sand dune. And if you are leaving, as horrible as it was, the bounty, the agricultural abundance of Egypt, and you are stepping into the wilderness, what are you asking yourself? What happens when your water runs dry? Where are you going to get your next meal? Where are you going to sleep that night? What happens when the clothes you are wearing wear down? There is so much uncertainty ahead, and yet we left, what's the word? Triumphantly. We left triumphantly into the wilderness because there is joy in what we are carrying to. There is life in what we are carrying to. There is something irreplaceably holy that we were carrying with us even as we moved into this place of uncertainty. And so I want to fast forward some thousands of years to a more modern ethical will. Do you know what an ethical will is? An ethical will is a statement of values, a statement of faith and morality that an older generation would leave behind for a younger generation, that in the event that they pass before they can share these words, the younger generation might embrace these values for themselves. I share that with you because there's an ethical will that was written by someone, we don't know her name, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. We don't know her name. All she is known as is your mother in the byline. And she writes that Judaism is the struggle to bring God into this world. Judaism is how we sanctify the human heart. That Judaism is how we make the world holy. That Judaism is how we make ourselves holy. And the power of this ethical will is that it was written by a woman in the Warsaw Ghetto in the year 1940. The Warsaw Ghetto in the year 1940, this author of this ethical will knew about the Gestapo. She knew about the Nuremberg laws. She knew about Kristallnacht. She knew about the ghettos. My God, she was living in one. She knew about the camps. And yet, what was the Judaism that she passed down? Judaism is how we sanctify the world. Judaism is how we sanctify the human heart. Judaism, there's still light and there's still joy to this thing that we are. And I share this ethical will with you in the important context because as a parent, as grandparents, as aunts and uncles and cousins, as people who this next generation looks up to, I can't control the darkness that is coming in. I can't control what an elementary school child might feel. And this happened to us recently. As parents, we were representing Israel at our international fair, and we didn't know if we were going to be heckled. We coordinated with the other parents, the other families who are representing Israel, and I can promise you, the Russia table did not have to do this. The China table did not have to do this. I share this joy with you because what do we tell our junior high kids or our high school kids who are scrolling? They just want to catch up with their friends. And I was talking to a high school student just earlier today who said, you have no idea what I have to scroll past just to talk to my guys. You have no idea. You have no idea what our college students have to deal with. And I shared this on Rosh Hashanah, where they're not even putting up a mezuzah because the last kid who did was tagged by anti-Semitic hate speech. You have no idea what they have to go through as they cover up a Magen David or a Chamsa or a mezuzah, some kind of Jewish identifier, as they're passing through a hostile environment on their campus. I cannot control, and neither can you, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. I cannot control the darkness that is coming in, but you can add to the light. You can add to the light in a way that no one else for these children can. And so I want to invite you tonight to add something more. As the darkness feels like it's closing in on us, to add something more of this light and joy of who you are. If you've never lit Shabbat candles before, next Shabbat is a great opportunity to try. Or even better, if you feel uncomfortable with that, come to our services at Washington Hebrew. They are fantastic in a wonderful way to create community, Jewish community for you. And bring your kids. Bring your grandkids. If you're in college, take a Jewish studies class, not a politics class, a Jewish studies class. And if you're not in college, join us at Washington Hebrew. We have fantastic adult level learning that I think you will love. I want you to do it for you because I want you to pass this down. I want you to love this more this year. I want you to choose life so that you and your children may live. And I want you to share a blessing. I want you to share a blessing because our people for the past 1,000 years have begun each day with a bracha, with a series of blessings called Nasim B'chol Yom, our blessings for the daily miracles of our lives. Among this list, as we pray, as we thank God for being able to open our eyes, as we thank God for having the strength to move through our day, as we thank God for having clothing to wear, as we thank God for being free, we also say this bracha, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani Yisrael. She'asani Yisrael, who has made me a Jew. And the beauty of this prayer is that we've been saying it for 1,000 years. The beauty of this prayer is that we've been saying this blessing in the good days and the good weeks and the good months and the good decades of our people's story. And we've been saying this prayer in the hard days and the hard weeks and the hard months and the hard decades of our story too. Every day of our lives, we have woken up and thanked God for creating us as Jews. And so I want you to tell your kids this year. I want you to tell your grandkids this year. I want you to tell those who look up to you that I love this, that this is who I am, that this is a gift given to me by 200 generations that came before me. And in love, I pass it down to you. I want every day of this new year, even if you don't say that blessing itself, to be a gift, to be a light. I want there to be Jewish joy in your life so that every day, you say, Baruch atah Adonai, she'asani Yisrael. Blessed are you, Adonai, who has created me, a Jew. Shana Tova, and Gemar Tov.